Hey everyone, Nicky Skevich here with Daily Fantasy Winners, back for the next edition of Tee to Green here. And it is for the Travelers Championship, a tournament that's really gotten to be a pretty darn good field here, just really over the last year or two. It used to be one of the weaker tournaments just as far as field strength goes. And, for whatever reason, a lot of people really seem to like this more and more. And so the field just keeps getting stronger and stronger. So should be a lot of fun this week. And everything like that, and good for the people at Travelers. So, real quick here, just as far as what this tournament is, it's the shortest golf course on the entire PGA Tour. It only plays at like 6,800 and some odd yards, and so length definitely not important here at all. There's like an average amount of eagles, birdies, pars, bogeys, double bogeys. It's just average for all intents and purposes across the board. It's average in terms of how difficult the tournament usually plays in terms of scoring average in relation to par. And so what we are looking for here, though, it's pretty standard, to be fair. Strokes gained off the tee and approaching the green both show up here. I think it's more approaching the green, more of a... usually, strokes gained off the tee, you'll usually see longer courses kind of pop up here. But for some reason, it's popped up here, actually, even though it's a kind of a shorter course, which is a little fascinating. The rough here can be pretty penal, so I'm guessing that definitely plays a role into it. There are some penalty strokes off the tee when it comes to ponds and water hazards. So it's probably a combination of a lot of little things, maybe, that leads to some strokes gained off the tee showing up here. But so we'll look at that a little bit. But certainly the strokes gained approaching the green as well. And so with that, we can just dive on into the top golfers. And so Justin Thomas leading it off here at 11,500. He is definitely my favorite, actually, of these of the most expensive players. He's playing extremely good golf, and so I know he didn't finish at the top of the U.S. Open, but quite frankly, when it comes to the whole recent form thing, I really wouldn't look that closely at the U.S. Open, just because depending what tee time wave you were in there, especially when it came down Friday, and obviously what time you teed off on Saturday, and maybe you just hit the ball poorly on one of the days, it's just like your score can be really magnified to make it look a lot worse than what it actually was. And so just for all these guys and all your research and whatever you're doing, I would just say, yeah, you can look at recent form and factor in the U.S. Open, of course, but I really just wouldn't put a huge emphasis on how they did the U.S. Open, really, for what this tournament is, with the exception of one player, and I'll mention on here in just a second. But sticking with JT here, there's everything I like about him right now. His recent form, really though, is fantastic from top to bottom. He is the odds-on favorite here, just slightly, 7.38 here in the odds per dollar for DraftKings. Odds-on favorite here slightly for FanDuel, and looks like he's the second most expensive on FanDuel to Koepka. But yeah, either way, I like JT the most. You guys know this, obviously. He checks pretty much all the boxes in strokes gained in every single stat. And so, yeah, I like JT the most. It really is that simple. And so, I will also just add that the pricing is pretty crappy this week on DraftKings as far as, in relation to what the odds makers feel, what the odds makers have. So I do think you can still make very good lineups with JT. And that goes for cash and GPPs for that matter. So I definitely like him. Brooks Koepka here at 11,300. The only thing I don't like about Koepka this week is just that he won last week. And I don't even mean that so much from an ownership standpoint. I more mean it just in that typically when a guy wins a major championship, he usually doesn't do well in the next tournament, especially when it's the following week. There's just some celebrating that goes on, and even though they're in good form. And obviously not saying Koepka's not going to try by any means, but I will just say that, it's obviously very tough to win back-to-back weeks, and it's just one of those things where usually you're not as mentally in tune with it. It's just kind of natural and happens. And so, in any case, so that's the only reason that's the only thing I really have that's anti-Koepka. It's really amazing to see. So if you scroll over here, I pointed this out that I loved Koepka last week, so hopefully you guys all played Koepka last week with him winning. And obviously his strokes gained stats, I wouldn't look at this too much because he was injured, and so Koepka doesn't have nearly as much data to go off as some of these other guys. But obviously his strokes gained approach to the green had been pretty bad this year, but it really got better obviously at the U.S. Open, and the ball striking was better, particularly on Sunday. That was some really impressive approach shots that he was hitting there down the stretch on Sunday. That was really well done. So Koepka is definitely rounding into form, and his wrist obviously seems perfectly fine. But just as far as JT or Koepka, I would definitely prefer Koepka. Or excuse me, I definitely prefer JT over Koepka coming into this tournament for both cash and GPPs, especially when they're right at the same price. So Roy McIlroy here, 10,900. Yeah, so he's missed the cut at 2 of his last 4 events, but obviously his upside's been pretty good though, because he finished T8 at Memorial. He nearly won the BMW with a 2nd place, and had a bunch of good finishes before that. Obviously won the Arnold Palmer way back in February or beginning of March, actually, I should say. So as far as Rory goes, not strongly for or against him, I guess. I would just say that while this field is definitely stronger than what it's traditionally been, it's still not like a field that's like, it's not a Riviera field, it's not a WGC field or major field. And Rory at 10,900, usually going into like a little bit of a weaker field, it's kind of a nice concept. And I just, remember Rory had the bad tee time wave at the U.S. Open, and he was just spraying it everywhere on the first day. And so obviously, if his driver's off just one day, or if anybody's driver's off one day at a place like Shinnecock, then you're just going to be, that's why he shot 80. It's pretty much that simple. So I just really wouldn't look at the missed cut too much there. When it came to the Open last week. So yeah, I think Rory's good. There's nothing. I don't think he's not my top play. I still would rather play JT over Rory for this week. But I would say that Rory, everything is perfectly fine. I wouldn't worry about like the missed cut or anything last week. Or I don't think he's like really far off by any means of the imagination. So Jordan Spieth, yeah. So if you want to buy the strokes gain putting regression, he's a plus 0.7. Go for it. It's one of those things that I will just say that, Spieth missed his last 2 cuts. And so my guess is there's a part of me that says, yeah, his ownership won't be that high for that reason. There will be enough people who will just play Rory or go up to the top with JT and Koepka. And obviously the 9K range isn't too shabby either, at least the upper part of it. But, he's still Jordan Spieth, and he obviously is the defending champion here and everything like that, and people will still play that he's got the good ball striking angle, that putting regression is going to come around. So you're going to get a mixed bag here of people, I think. So it probably will even out to be just kind of like a middle-of-the-road ownership for him at like 15% in GPPs. And so it's just up to you if you want to play if you just want to play the regression game, or if you just want to take a seat on the side or whatever, and just sit out until he wins, and then basically, and then you can jump on that once you think he's got his putting figured out. But because what's going to happen here is basically once Spieth wins and his putter shows that he's figured, once he either wins or he shows a few tournaments in a row where he's figured the putter out, Spieth's ownership's going to skyrocket immediately. That's what happened with Rory. Nobody was really playing Rory at the beginning of the year, even though it was only 1 or 2 bad tournaments, and then he won the Arnold Palmer, and then everybody started playing him again. And so, everybody's going to jump on Spieth the second it happens, but it's just a matter if you want to be the first on him to when that regression hits, or if you just want to wait and say it's not worth it. It's your call. If I were you, if you're just making a couple lineups, I would absolutely play Spieth, because I still think that this putting regression thing is going to come around for him, despite that this has been going on for a while. And the ball striking is too good, and it's not a really strong field that I would just say that I don't think Spieth's missing the cut here. This is not even the strength of the Memorial field. So I will be genuinely shocked if Spieth misses the cut. I think your worst case scenario here is Spieth misses, or he makes the cut but finishes 30th, 40th, or something like that, or 50th maybe. That's more your worst case scenario, but that's the most likely worst case scenario, if that makes sense, if you will. So I guess it's always possible he misses the cut here, but. Moving on to Patrick Reed, though. I actually like Patrick Reed a lot in GPPs here. Reed's fascinating. He almost won the U.S. Open, and he would have won the first 2 majors. And I just was kind of thinking about that as he was coming down the back 9, just because, Patrick Reed's something that's always been in, at least major championships. He's always been that guy that's been, upper 7K range, lower 8K range. Depends on his form, obviously, but usually not super highly owned, but not he was never 5% owned unless he was in the worst form ever. He was usually that 10, 12% guy that was owned, in that lower 8K, upper 7K range in the strongest fields. And then the weaker fields, he'd be lower 9K or upper 8K. But now we're starting to see Patrick Reed, he is a younger player, and he's probably just entering his prime right now. And I think, a lot of people think of Patrick Reed probably as a top, maybe 20, 25 golfer, and he's probably more a top 15, top 20 golfer, I would think, at this point, and I don't think anybody's really viewing him as a top 10 player, and I don't think he is either, but I just see this that, like, you know what, he's $10,000 and he's surrounded right by the people of Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, Paul Casey. And I don't think Reed's actually going to get a ton of ownership here. It's just a kind of a little bit of a hunch, I think, just because they're going to see $10,000 Patrick Reed with so many other good names around him. I just don't think he's going to get a ton of ownership. But I actually think it's plausible here that Patrick Reed is developing into being a top 15 player. I don't know if he's top 10 yet, but it just, you know, and the one knock you would say on Patrick Reed really is the fact that he's not like a great driver of the golf ball. But I mean, Spieth has proven, obviously, that you do not have to be, like, an extraordinary driver of the golf ball. Like, you don't have to be, like, a bomber to be, like, one of the best players. It does mean you have to be really good at other stuff. And you have to rely on it a little bit more. But I'm just making the point that it's not, like, by no means impossible. So, you know, I would just say if you take a look here with Reed, at the strokes gained statistics, yeah, he's 103rd off the tee, which obviously isn't that great. But really, his approach game is really good, and his ball striking's been like much improved here this year, and really over the last couple of years. I mean, it's always been like a decent thing for him, but it's been even better here as he's kind of entering the prime of his career. He's always had a good short game and everything like that, and he's 62nd in strokes gained putting. But as you can see here, this plus 0.1, he's usually better than 62nd in strokes gained putting. So I don't know. I just kind of have a hunch here that Reed won't be that highly owned, and you know, he's clearly in really good form with, you know, finishing 4th at the U.S. Open, tied for 29th at Memorial, tied for 41st at the Players. The Players is a tournament that definitely you need to be more better, like, you know, tee to green type of thing a little bit. So that was, you know, the Players, like, Spieth's never really that good at the Players. Like, Reed's kind of like the same thing. You know, Reed and Spieth are not really, like, yeah, they're good approach players, but they're not the greatest off the tee, and you usually would like, you know, both there. But anyways, he finished in 8th at Wells Fargo, and he obviously won the Masters, was 7th at Arnold Palmer, and 2nd at the Valspar. And it's just funny. I think this is just like one of those spots where I again, like I said, like, you know, the odds per dollar here, as you can see, it drops off like a full point here from Spieth to Reed, even though they're very close to the same price. You know, Reed's about the same as Day and Casey and whatnot, but. Long story short, play him in GPPs. I really think it's a nice spot where you can actually play like a really good reason for him and not get like too high of ownership. You know, I'm sure it's not like he's going to be 5% owned. It will be like probably 10% owned, but I don't think he'll get over 15. I think that's kind of a nice thing. I'm guessing like 10-12% for Reed, but yeah, I guess we'll see. Wasn't really going to dive into the 9K range, but I'll just brush over it real quick. Jason Day, I think it's good for GPPs. I understand if you don't want to go the cash route. Casey's probably the better route for cash. It's kind of weird. I kind of hate it when people say, like, oh, I'd much rather have, like, you know, you look at player A and player B for, like, players at the same price, and you say, oh, player A is way more likely to win, but player B is, like, way more likely to make the cut. Like, I think that really doesn't true. I don't think it could be, like, that drastically different. But for what it's worth, like, I do think it's fair to say, like, yeah, like, Casey's, like, a little bit more likely to make the cut because his ball striking's so consistent, whereas Day, you're a little more on the boomer bust side of things, just from like the ball striking standpoint. But again, this field is like still not strong enough to the point where I just would be just so shocked if Jason Day missed the cut here. I mean, his course is 6,800 yards here, and Day's probably just going to be hitting irons and like, you know, fairway woods off the tee anyway, and he'll very rarely be out of position and everything like that. His strokes gained putting did regress some more at the U.S. Open. It's been regressing here over the last few weeks. So even though he still has some regression to go, he has been regressing over the last few weeks, and he's been more like average. So I just wouldn't like, you know, it's not like Jay is running particularly hot with the putter in recent form. For this year overall, he still has been. But just for the last, you know, handful of tournaments, he has not been running hot with the putter. So I'm not as worried about his strokes gained putting regression at this point. It might still be a little bit hot overall, but I just don't think again, like I've said before, it'll be this high. As far as, I liked him last week for the U.S. Open. Obviously, that did not work out. The main thing that just shocked me, though, is that he was so bad off the tee on the first day. That really blew my mind, and that's what I wasn't expecting. And so, but it can happen to anybody on one round. And so it unfortunately just kind of took him out of the tournament. And so it really didn't matter how good he was in the other spots unless he literally made like every single putt, which didn't happen. So, but anyways, Jason A, 9,800, not that strong of a field, and just because he missed the cut recently, I don't think he'll be particularly highly owned. And by the way, like, you're kind of getting the theme here. I don't think any of these guys here at the top are going to be like especially highly owned. I think it's going to be relatively spread out. So, the one guy here that might be decently owned is Paul Casey, just because everybody like is just on the Paul Casey train of just being the safest guy ever in terms of like making the cut and like very likely finishing top 10 or like top 15. He's like the better version of Matt Kuchar essentially, for where the way he's playing in, has been traded here, I guess, for a while from the DFS player. So, yeah, Casey's finding cash if you want to go that route. Don't have to, but I think that's perfectly fine and understandably why you'd want to do that. GPPs, he'll be a little higher owned, I think, more in like that 20 to 25% range. Maybe not 25. That's a little high. There's enough good players on him. Probably more like 20. So yeah, but they're both fine. Between these last few guys here, I would not play Webb Simpson. Just this minus 0.76 again. Like he's 101st in strokes gained off. Webb is 101st in strokes gained off the tee, and Webb is just not this good of a putter. I maybe he's improved since learning how to use the more traditional putter, but I just don't buy that he's this good. And I just wouldn't want to pay 9,100 for him. I mean, Webb's he should be more like mid 8K range in my mind. And so I probably wouldn't play Webb Simpson. Ryan Moore will not be very highly owned, and I think that's an okay thing to sprinkle a little ownership in if you're making a ton of lineups, and who has quietly like some pretty decent form. So I think you could do a little bit of Ryan Moore actually, I think, in GPPs. DeChambeau and Leishman I like a lot. Well, I like him pretty good. Let's put it this way. I wouldn't play DeChambeau or Leishman in cash. Like, if you're going to play cash, you're going to be playing Paul Casey. Like go figure. But between DeChambeau and Leishman, they'll both be owned finally, like 15%. They're fine if you want to go with them GPPs. I like them about the same. I mean, their statistics really across the board here just are the exact same. Oops, I got the wrong guys. DeChambeau and Leishman. I mean, if you just look, straight across here, their odds per dollar are the same. They're both right now. Actually, I was looking at the wrong name there. DeChambeau is 11th off the tee, 18th approaching the green. And so I would say like DeChambeau's probably a little bit better on the tee to green, from the tee to green standpoint. This is a little more of a tee to green golf course. That I would say I'd like DeChambeau just a smidge over Leishman, which is really weird to say, which I can't believe I'm kind of saying right now. But I do like both of them a relatively decent amount for GPPs. So. A lot of good GPP options, I think, here in this mid-tier, just really from Rory all the way down through, I guess, Ryan Moore minus Simpson, and I guess I probably wouldn't there. With Casey's just more of a cash play in my mind. And so, so there you guys go. I will touch on the guys I like for the 8K, 7K, and 6K range on the forum. You can always follow me at Nick Iskevich on Twitter, DailyFantasyWinners on Twitter, at DFSnerd, and thanks for watching as usual. Thank you for all the likes and subscriptions to our stuff on YouTube, and so good luck everybody this week.